The Vexari battleship Wrath of Conquest hung dead in the cold void of space, its engines silent and its weapons cold. Commander Thexler pressed his clawed hand against the cracked viewport and watched the Terran warships circle his vessel like predators waiting for the kill. He had failed. The ambush on the human colony of New Brisbane had been meant to be quick and brutal. His fleet of 12 warships was supposed to destroy the settlement and leave nothing but ash and memory. The Vexari High Council had ordered it as a message to the galactic community. Humanity was young, barely 50 years into their expansion among the stars. They needed to learn their place. But the humans had fought back with a fury that Thexler had never seen in his 300 years of war. Their ships were smaller, their technology less advanced, but they flew with a madness that bordered on suicide. They threw themselves into the teeth of his fleet and tore it apart from the inside. Now only the Wrath of Conquest remained, and it was crippled beyond repair. Life support was failing. The reactor was damaged. In perhaps 2 hours, everyone aboard would be dead. Thexler turned to his bridge crew. 20 Vexari officers sat at their stations, their scales pale with fear. None of them spoke. They all knew what was coming. "Send the final message to High Command," Thexler ordered. His voice was steady despite everything. "Tell them we failed. Tell them the humans are more dangerous than we believed." His communications officer, a young female named Cassara, worked her console with trembling hands. "Commander, I am receiving a transmission. It is from the lead Terran vessel." Thexler's eyes narrowed. "They wish to gloat before we die. Very well, put it through." The main view screen flickered to life. A human face appeared. It belonged to a female with short dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of many years and many battles. She wore a simple gray uniform with medals on her chest. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," the human said. "You are the commander of the Vexari vessel." Thexler stood straight and proud. He would face death with dignity. "I am Commander Thexler of the Vexari Dominion. If you have come to watch us die, then watch. I will not beg for mercy." The human was quiet for a moment. Then she did something that confused Thexler completely. She smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. It was almost sad. "Commander, our scans show your life support is failing. You have perhaps 90 minutes of breathable air remaining. Your reactor is unstable. Your ship cannot save you." "I am aware of our situation," Thexler replied coldly. "What is your point, human?" "My point is this." Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. "Prepare your crew for evacuation. We are sending rescue ships to bring you aboard our vessels. You will be treated as prisoners of war under Terran military law." Thexler did not understand. He must have heard wrong. "What did you say?" "I said we are going to save your lives, Commander. All of you. Every single member of your crew." The bridge went completely silent. Cassara stopped working and stared at the screen with wide eyes. The other officers looked at each other in disbelief. Thexler shook his head slowly. "That is not possible. You are lying. This is some trick." "No trick." Admiral Chen's voice was firm. "You have my word as an officer of the Terran Defense Force. Surrender your weapons and prepare for evacuation. You will be treated humanely. You will receive medical care. You will be fed and sheltered. When this conflict ends, you will be returned to your people." "But we attacked your colony," Thexler shouted. He could not believe what he was hearing. "We killed your people. We came here to destroy you. Why would you save us?" Admiral Chen was quiet again. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "Because you are dying, Commander, and we do not leave anyone to die in the dark, not even our enemies. That is not who we are." Thexler felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as confusion mixed with something else. Something he had not felt in a very long time. "Hope." "Admiral Chen," he said slowly, "in 300 years of war I have fought many species across this galaxy. The Keithrani, the Morphid Swarm, the Iron Collective. All of them would have left us to die. All of them would have watched and celebrated as our air ran out. You are the first enemy to offer mercy." "Then maybe it is time you met a different kind of enemy," Admiral Chen replied. "Now prepare your crew. Our rescue ships will arrive in 15 minutes. The transmission ended. Thexler stood frozen in place as his crew stared at him, waiting for orders. "Commander," Kesara whispered, "is this real? Are the humans truly going to save us?" Thexler did not know how to answer. Everything he had been taught about war, about honor, about how the universe worked, told him this was impossible. Enemies did not save enemies. The weak died and the strong survived. That was the law of the galaxy. But the humans did not seem to care about the law of the galaxy. "Prepare the crew for evacuation," Thexler ordered. "Lower our weapons, open the airlocks, we will trust them." The words felt strange coming from his mouth. Trust was not a word the Vexari used often, especially not with enemies. 15 minutes later, Thexler watched as a Terran rescue shuttle docked with his dying ship. The airlock opened, and human soldiers stepped through. They wore armor and carried weapons, but they did not point them at the Vexari crew. A young human male stepped forward. He had a kind face and gentle eyes. "I am Lieutenant James Morrison," he said. "We are here to help. Is anyone injured?" "Several of my crew are wounded from the battle," Thexler admitted. "They need medical attention." "Show us where they are. We have medics ready." What happened next shocked Thexler more than anything else that had happened that day. The human medics rushed past him without fear. They found the wounded Vexari and began treating them with the same care they would show their own people. They stopped bleeding, they applied bandages, they gave medicine for pain. One Vexari warrior, a young male named Drex, had lost an arm in the battle. He was dying from blood loss. The humans worked on him for 20 minutes, fighting to keep him alive. They gave him their own blood synthetic compounds that matched Vexari biology. They refused to let him die. And when Drex finally stabilized, the human medic who had saved him looked exhausted but happy. She smiled at Thexler and said, "He will live. He needs more surgery, but he will live." "Why?" Thexler asked. He could not stop asking that question. "Why did you fight so hard to save him? He is your enemy. An hour ago he was trying to kill your people." The medic shrugged. "Because he is a person, Commander, that is all that matters." Thexler stood in silence as his crew was led to the rescue shuttles. 437 Vexari walked off the asterisk wrath of conquest that day. 437 lives that should have been lost to the cold void. The humans saved every single one of them. As Thexler was the last to board the shuttle, he looked back at his dying ship one final time. Then he turned to Lieutenant Morrison. "Your species is strange," he said quietly. Morrison smiled. "Yeah, we get that a lot." The news of what happened at New Brisbane spread quickly through the galactic community. The Terrans had been attacked, had lost hundreds of colonists, had fought a brutal battle to defend their people. And then they had turned around and saved the enemy soldiers who had tried to kill them. No one knew what to make of it. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, representatives from 100 different species gathered to discuss this unexpected development. The chamber was enormous, filled with beings of every shape and size. Some had scales, some had fur, some had shells or wings or tentacles. They came from worlds scattered across the galaxy, from civilizations both ancient and young. Ambassador Velric of the Methane Collective was the first to speak. His species breathed gases that were poison to most other beings, and he stood inside a sealed environmental suit. His voice came through a translator, flat and emotionless. "The humans showed mercy to their enemies. This is unusual behavior. We must discuss what it means." "It means they are weak," declared High Priest Zorval of the Crimson Faith. His species worshipped strength above all else, and they had conquered a dozen worlds through pure military might. "Mercy is weakness. The humans will not survive long if they refuse to destroy their enemies completely. I disagree, said Scholar Phoenix of the Thoughtful. Her species was known for their intelligence and their careful study of other civilizations. Mercy requires strength. It would have been easy for the humans to let the Vexari die. It cost them nothing to simply wait. By choosing to save their enemies, they demonstrated a kind of power we have not seen before. The debate continued for hours. Some species agreed with High Priest Zorval. Mercy was foolish. It invited future attacks. The Vexari would recover, rebuild their fleet, and come back to destroy humanity. Other species were more curious. They wanted to understand why the humans had made this choice. Was it part of their culture, their religion, their biology? Were humans simply incapable of watching others suffer, even enemies who deserved to suffer? No one had a good answer. Meanwhile, on the Terran prison world of Haven Station, Commander Thexler and his crew were trying to understand their new reality. Haven Station was not what Thexler had expected. In his experience, prisons were dark and cold places where captives were left to rot. The Vexari Dominion kept its prisoners in tiny cells with barely enough food to survive. Pain was common. Death was even more common. But Haven Station was different. The cells were small but clean. The food was simple but plentiful. The guards were firm but fair. No one was beaten. No one was tortured. No one was left to suffer. Medical care was provided to every prisoner who needed it. Young Drex, who had lost his arm in the battle, was given a prosthetic limb made by Terran doctors. It was not as good as his original arm, but it worked. He could use it. The humans had given him back a piece of what he had lost. Thexler spent his days walking the common areas of the prison, watching his crew interact with their captors. At first, the Vexari were afraid and angry. They snapped at the human guards and refused to follow orders. They expected punishment, violence, revenge. But the punishment never came. The guards remained calm and patient. They explained the rules clearly and gave warnings before taking action. They treated the Vexari with a basic respect that was completely alien to Thexler's understanding of war. One day, Thexler was approached by a human officer. She introduced herself as Warden Patricia Hayes, the commander of Haven Station. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Commander Thexler," she said, "I hope your accommodations are acceptable." "They are more than acceptable," Thexler admitted. "I do not understand why you treat us this way. We are your enemies." Warden Hayes nodded slowly. "You were our enemies in battle. Now you are prisoners of war. There is a difference." "In my culture, there is no difference. An enemy is an enemy until death." "Then your culture is different from ours." Warden Hayes sat down across from him. "Commander, let me ask you something. Before the battle, what did you know about humanity?" Thexler thought carefully. "Very little. You are a young species. You expanded quickly into the galaxy. The High Council believed you needed to be taught your place in the order of things." "And what do you know about us now?" That was a harder question. Thexler looked around the common room. He saw his crew eating their meals, talking with each other, even playing games to pass the time. He saw human guards watching them, not with hatred or contempt, but with simple vigilance. "I know that you are not what I expected," he said finally. "I know that you confuse me." Warden Hayes smiled slightly. "Good. Confusion is the first step toward understanding." "Why do you do this?" Thexler leaned forward. "Why do you save enemies? Why do you treat prisoners with kindness? This is not efficient. It costs you resources and time. It gains you nothing." "It gains us everything," Warden Hayes replied. "Commander, humanity has a long and violent history. We have fought countless wars among ourselves. We have committed terrible crimes against our own people. We have seen the worst that intelligence can produce." She paused, her eyes growing distant as if seeing memories from long ago. "But we have also learned from our mistakes. We have learned that cruelty breeds more cruelty. We have learned that mercy can break cycles of violence that last for generations. We have learned that treating enemies with dignity does not make us weak. It makes us strong in ways that matter more than military power. That is a strange philosophy, Thexler said. Perhaps, but it has served us well. Warden Hayes stood up. You will remain here until the conflict between our peoples is resolved. I hope that by then you will understand us better, and perhaps you will carry that understanding back to your people. She walked away, leaving Thexler alone with his thoughts. Days turned into weeks. The Vexari prisoners gradually adjusted to their strange new existence. Some of them remained angry and hostile, but most began to soften. It was hard to hate people who fed you, healed you, and treated you with basic decency. Kesara, the young communications officer, was one of the first to change. She began talking with the human guards, asking questions about their world and their culture. The guards were happy to answer. They told her about Earth, about its oceans and forests and cities. They told her about human history, about their wars and their achievements. They told her about their families and their dreams. The humans are not what I thought, Kesara told Thexler one evening. They are kind. They laugh easily. They care about each other in ways I have never seen among the Vexari. They are still the enemy, Thexler reminded her. But even as he said the words, he was not sure he believed them anymore. 1 month after the Battle of New Brisbane, news reached Haven Station. The Galactic Council had demanded a meeting with humanity to discuss their unprecedented behavior. Representatives from dozens of species wanted to understand why the Terrans had shown mercy to enemies who had attacked them. And the humans had agreed to explain. The meeting was broadcast across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched as a single human stepped onto the stage of the Galactic Council. He was a middle-aged man with brown skin and calm eyes. His name was Ambassador David Okonkwo, and he represented all of humanity. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, Ambassador Okonkwo began. His voice was quiet but carried easily through the massive chamber. I understand that many of you are confused by our actions at New Brisbane. I am here to explain. High Priest Zorval interrupted immediately. You showed mercy to enemies who tried to destroy you. This is weakness. There is nothing to explain. Ambassador Okonkwo smiled gently. With respect, High Priest, I disagree. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is a choice. It is the choice to be better than our worst impulses. It is the choice to recognize that even our enemies are living beings with value. Value, High Priest Zorval snarled. They tried to kill your people. They did, and we defended ourselves. We fought back with everything we had. Many Vexari died in that battle and many humans died too. But when the battle was over, when the Vexari ship was crippled and its crew was dying, we had another choice to make. Ambassador Okonkwo paused and looked around the chamber. Every eye was fixed on him. We could have let them die, he continued. It would have been easy. It would have been justified by many definitions. They were our enemies. They had attacked innocent people. No one would have blamed us for leaving them to suffocate in the dark. But you did not, Scholar Phoenix observed quietly. No, we did not, because that is not who we are. Ambassador Okonkwo's voice grew stronger. Humanity has learned, through centuries of blood and pain, that how we treat our enemies defines us more than how we treat our friends. When we show mercy, we declare to the universe what kind of people we choose to be. We declare that life has value, even the life of an enemy. We declare that we will not become monsters just because we are fighting monsters. The chamber was silent. No one seemed to know how to respond. I am not saying this is easy, Ambassador Okonkwo continued. It is not. Many humans wanted revenge for New Brisbane. Many wanted the Vexari to suffer for what they did. But we chose a different path. We chose to believe that peace is possible. We chose to believe that even enemies can become friends, given enough time and understanding. And if you are wrong, asked Ambassador Velric. "If the Vexari attack you again, then we will defend ourselves again, and if we win, we will show mercy again, as many times as it takes." The broadcast ended. The galaxy had heard humanity's explanation, and they still did not know what to make of it. But in a small cell on Haven Station, Commander Thexler watched the speech with tears running down his scaled face. For the first time in 300 years, he was not confused anymore. He understood. The war between humanity and the Vexari Dominion continued for 3 more months after Ambassador Okonkwo's speech. More battles were fought, more lives were lost, but something had changed. The Vexari High Council watched the broadcasts from Haven Station. They saw their captured soldiers being treated with dignity and care. They heard reports from Commander Thexler and his crew, messages that spoke of kindness and respect from an enemy that had every right to hate them. And slowly, something began to shift. It started with small things. Vexari commanders who had previously fought with mindless fury began to hesitate. They started asking questions. Why were they fighting? What did they hope to gain? Was this war truly necessary? The humans noticed these changes. They responded not with aggression but with communication. Admiral Sarah Chen reached out to her counterparts in the Vexari military. She proposed meetings, discussions, attempts at understanding. She offered peace without demanding surrender. At first, the Vexari High Council rejected these offers. They saw them as tricks, attempts to weaken their resolve. But as the months passed, and as more Vexari soldiers experienced human mercy firsthand, the voices calling for peace grew louder. Finally, after 112 days of conflict, the Vexari High Council agreed to peace talks. The negotiations took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. Ambassador Okonkwo represented humanity. High Lord Kethril, the leader of the Vexari Dominion, represented his people. They met in a small room with simple furniture and no weapons. "I do not understand you," High Lord Kethril said as soon as the doors closed. "I have studied your species since this conflict began. I have read every report, watched every broadcast, analyzed every piece of data, and I still do not understand you." "What do you not understand?" Ambassador Okonkwo asked calmly. "Why did you save our soldiers? Why do you treat our prisoners with kindness? Why do you offer peace when you are winning the war? None of it makes sense." Ambassador Okonkwo sat back in his chair. "High Lord, may I tell you a story?" Kethril made a gesture of impatience. "If it will help me understand." "Many centuries ago, before humanity ever reached the stars, we fought a great war among ourselves. It was the worst war in our history. Millions of people died. Cities were destroyed. Entire nations were reduced to rubble." "This is not encouraging," Kethril observed dryly. "No, but listen to what came after." Ambassador Okonkwo leaned forward. "When the war ended, the winning side had a choice. They could punish the losing side. They could crush them completely, take everything they had, leave them broken and humiliated. Many people wanted exactly that. That would be the natural thing to do. Perhaps, but the winning side chose differently. They decided to help rebuild the losing side. They sent food, medicine, money, resources. They treated their former enemies not as defeated foes to be punished, but as future friends to be supported." High Lord Kethril stared at the human with open confusion. Why would they do such a thing? Because they understood something important. They understood that crushing an enemy only creates more enemies. The sons and daughters of the defeated grow up filled with hate, dreaming of revenge. The cycle of violence continues forever. But if you show mercy, if you help your enemy become something better, you break the cycle. You create the possibility of real, lasting peace. "And this worked?" Kethril asked skeptically. "It did. The nations that were once bitter enemies became close allies. They built a future together instead of destroying each other. That lesson has stayed with us ever since." High Lord Kethril was quiet for a long moment. His clawed hands were clasped together, his eyes fixed on the table between them. "Commander Thexler sent me a message," he said finally. "He told me about his time as your prisoner. He told me about the kindness he witnessed, the care given to wounded soldiers, the respect shown to every member of his crew. He said he no longer understood what it meant to be Vexari, because everything he thought he knew about war had been proven wrong." "And what did you think of his message?" "At first I thought he had been brainwashed or tricked. I ordered an investigation, but every report confirmed his words. Your treatment of prisoners was consistent across every facility, every ship, every world. Kindness was not an exception. It was the rule." High Lord Kethril looked up and met Ambassador Okonkwo's eyes directly. "I am 3,000 years old, Ambassador. I have led my people through countless wars. I have destroyed civilizations that threatened us. I have watched millions die at my command, and in all that time I have never encountered anything like humanity." "Is that a compliment or a concern?" Ambassador Okonkwo asked with a slight smile. "I am not certain yet." Kethril rose from his chair and walked to the small window that looked out into space. "Your species is dangerous, Ambassador, not because of your weapons or your ships, but because of your ideas. You believe in things that should not work: mercy for enemies, kindness to prisoners, peace without conquest. These are weaknesses that should destroy you." "But they have not." "No, they have not, and that is what I cannot understand." Ambassador Okonkwo joined the Vexari leader at the window. Stars burned in the endless dark, cold and distant. "Perhaps," the ambassador said quietly, "the galaxy has been wrong about what makes a species strong. Perhaps true strength is not the ability to destroy, but the courage to forgive. Perhaps the greatest victory is not wiping out your enemies, but turning them into friends." High Lord Kethril was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. "My people have been warriors for 10,000 years. We conquered our way across the stars because that is what we believed strength required. We never questioned it. Why would we? Every other species we encountered behaved the same way. War was the natural order of the universe." "It does not have to be," Ambassador Okonkwo said. "No, I am beginning to see that." Kethril turned to face the human. "I came here expecting to negotiate terms of continued conflict. I expected demands and threats and posturing, but you have offered me something different. You have offered me a choice I never knew existed." "What choice is that?" "The choice to change. The choice to believe that the Vexari could be something other than conquerors. The choice to imagine a future where we do not measure our worth in blood and destruction." Ambassador Okonkwo smiled gently. "And what will you choose, High Lord?" Kethril stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he extended his clawed hand. "I choose peace, Ambassador. True peace, not just the absence of war. I want my people to learn what yours has learned. I want them to discover that mercy is not weakness, that kindness is not foolishness, that enemies can become friends." Ambassador Okonkwo took the offered hand and shook it firmly. "Then let us begin." The Treaty of New Hope was signed 1 week later. It was more than just an end to hostilities. It was a partnership. Humanity agreed to help the Vexari rebuild the ships they had lost. The Vexari agreed to return the territory they had conquered. Both species promised to work together for the benefit of all. But the most remarkable part of the treaty was the prisoner exchange. 437 Vexari soldiers returned home to the Dominion. They were greeted as heroes, not because they had won a great victory, but because they had survived something unprecedented. They had experienced human mercy, and they had been changed by it. Commander Thexler was the last to disembark from the transport ship. He walked down the ramp into the great plaza of the Vexari capital, where thousands of his people had gathered to witness the return. High Lord Kethril was waiting for him. "Commander," the High Lord said formally. "You have served our people well." Thexler bowed deeply. "I did nothing, my lord. The humans did everything." "No," Kethril shook his head. "You did something very important. You survived, you witnessed, and you reported the truth even when that truth was difficult to believe. Because of you, I understood what humanity truly is." "And what are they, my lord?" Kethril was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, an expression rarely seen on a Vexari face. "They are the future, and we must become more like them if we wish to have a future of our own." The news of the Treaty of New Hope spread across the galaxy, even faster than the news of human mercy had spread. Species that had watched the conflict with detached curiosity now watched the peace with something closer to wonder. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss what had happened. Ambassador Okonkwo stood before them once again, but this time he was not alone. High Lord Kethril stood beside him, the first Vexari leader to ever set foot in the council chambers. "We come before you today as former enemies turned partners," Ambassador Okonkwo announced. "The war between our peoples is over, not because one side defeated the other, but because we chose a different path." "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Velric declared. "In 10,000 years of galactic history, no war has ended this way." "Then perhaps it is time for new precedents," High Lord Kethril replied. His voice was strong and clear. "I was taught that war is the natural state of the universe. I believed it for 3,000 years, but humanity has shown me that I was wrong. Peace is possible, not the peace of conquest where one species dominates another. True peace, where former enemies work together as equals." High Priest Zorval rose from his seat, his face twisted with contempt. "This is weakness dressed up in pretty words. The humans have corrupted you, Kethril. You have abandoned everything the Vexari stand for." "No," Kethril replied calmly. "I have discovered something better than what we stood for. I have discovered hope." The debate raged for hours. Some species supported the human approach. Others condemned it as dangerous idealism. But as the session continued, a strange thing happened. More and more voices began to speak in favor of mercy. Scholar Phoenix of the Thoughtful made an impassioned speech about the power of compassion to transform civilizations. Ambassador Velric, despite his species' cold reputation, admitted that efficiency alone could not build lasting peace. Even some members of the Crimson Faith began to question whether strength without mercy was truly strength at all. By the time the session ended, the Galactic Council had passed a resolution. It was not binding and many species refused to sign it, but it was a start. The resolution recognized the right of prisoners of war to humane treatment. It encouraged mercy toward defeated enemies. It praised humanity for demonstrating a new way of conducting conflict. It was a small step, but small steps could lead to great journeys. 1 year after the Battle of New Brisbane, a ceremony was held on that very world. The colony had been rebuilt, bigger and better than before. Vexari construction crews had worked alongside human builders, learning new techniques and sharing old ones. In the center of the colony's main plaza, a monument had been erected. It was simple, 2 figures standing side by side, one human and one Vexari, their hands clasped together. Commander Thexler stood before the monument with Admiral Sarah Chen. They had met only once before, on the day she had offered to save his life. Now they stood together as something that had once seemed impossible. "Friends, I never thanked you properly," Thexler said quietly, "for saving my crew, for treating us with kindness when you had every right to hate us." Admiral Chen shook her head. "No thanks are necessary, Commander. We did what was right." "But how did you know it was right? How did you know that mercy would lead to this?" He gestured at the monument, at the mixed crowd of humans and Vexari who had gathered to witness the ceremony. "We did not know," Admiral Chen admitted. "We hoped. That is all any of us can do. hope that our choices lead to something better, hope that our enemies will respond to kindness with kindness, hope that peace is possible even when war seems inevitable. And if we had not responded, if we had seen your mercy as weakness and attacked again, then we would have defended ourselves again, and we would have shown mercy again, as many times as it took, because that is who we are. Thexler looked up at the monument. The two figures stood equal in height, equal in dignity, neither dominating the other. "You are strange creatures," he said. "In 300 years of war, I never imagined I would say this, but I am glad we lost to you." Admiral Chen laughed softly. "You did not lose, Commander. Neither did we. We both won something better than victory. We won a future." The ceremony began. Speeches were made. Songs were sung. Humans and Vexari who had once tried to kill each other now stood together, laughing and talking and sharing stories. And across the galaxy, other species watched and wondered. Perhaps mercy was not weakness after all. Perhaps kindness could be a weapon more powerful than any gun. Perhaps the humans had discovered something that the rest of the galaxy had missed in 10,000 years of war and conquest. Perhaps in the end, the strongest thing any species could do was choose to be good. The galactic community would never be the same again. Humanity had shocked them all, not with weapons or technology or military might, but with a simple act of compassion. They had saved their enemies, and in doing so, they had changed the universe. Terran soldiers showed mercy to enemies, and the entire galaxy learned what it meant to be truly strong.